AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy J this morning is former ABC 7 political reporter Charles Thomas. The Trans Day of Visibility proclamation last week from Mr. 10%, the big guy, President Biden, against the backdrop of the fights going on at the state level. We talked a little bit earlier where Indiana yesterday became the 18th state to prohibit, quote-unquote, gender-affirming medical treatments of minors, so puberty blockers, surgeries. Dylan Mulvaney. We've mentioned Dylan Mulvaney before. This is the young man, actually, who's spent the last year parading around as a sassy female, sort of following in the RuPaul footsteps to fame and corporate endorsements. And Dylan Mulvaney got another one, Bud Light. Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch, which made a special can featuring Dylan Mulvaney's visage. And Dylan Mulvaney was just tickled about it, of course. Here's the performance.
Hi. Impressive carrying skills, right? I got some Bud Lights for us. So, I kept hearing about this thing called March Madness, and I thought we were all just having a hectic month, but it turns out it has something to do with sports. And I'm not sure exactly which sport, but either way, it's a cause to celebrate. This month, I celebrated my day 365 of womanhood, and Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it. Check out my Instagram story to see how you can enjoy March Madness with Bud Light and maybe win some money too. Love ya! Cheers! Go team! Whatever team you love, I love too. Okay. Love ya. Okay, break a leg. Woo!
Intoxicating. Kid Rock. Kid Rock responded to this story of Dylan Mulvaney's Bud Light endorsement. And what you're about to hear, just so we're clear, is directed at a bunch of empty Bud Light 32 case Bud Light packages, not Dylan Mulvaney or anything having to do with him or trans or anything else. But anyway, here's Kid Rock's reply.
Grandpa's feeling a little frisky today. Let me say something to all you and be as clear and concise as possible.
A little aggressive, but yeah.
I say so.
A little aggressive. Nevertheless, this has gotten a lot of discussion, and Dylan Mulvaney continues to get a lot of discussion because he has been leveled up by both President Biden and Kamala Harris as some sort of trans icon, and of course, corporate America is following in tow. And there may be many more Dylan Mulvaneys who try to ply this trade for status and cash and prizes. This piece from 60 Minutes Australia, it's a topic we've covered before because it's not new, but the penetration of it is. I mean, it's not static. It's getting more and more acceptance, in part because of books like Raising Them by Kyle Myers, a mom of a non-binary. I mean, that's the approach that she and her husband are taking to not gender their kids, the so-called theybies. And Raising Them is a bestseller. And here's the philosophy of Kyle K-Y-L Myers. That's the mom. And again, this is not different than you will hear in virtually every school in this country.
It might sound extreme, but it's happening all around the world.
We're not trying to eliminate gender. We're actually trying to show how limitless gender can be, right? And just really helping kids find their own path to it and follow their lead so that they feel comfortable and authentic.
In America, someone who knows how it's done is gender creative parenting guru and social scientist Dr. Kyle Myers. 7 years ago, Kyle and her Australian husband Brent had their first baby, Zuma.
We didn't assign a gender at birth, and we didn't disclose Zuma's reproductive anatomy to people who didn't need to know. The reproductive anatomy that my kiddo was born with, I didn't want to assign too many labels and assumptions and, destinies on top of that. You can't tell what your gender is by looking at your body. Gender is something you feel on the inside.
Kyle has become the poster person for this unconventional parenting style, writing a best-selling book about her own experience.
So you believe that if you're born with a penis, doesn't necessarily make you a boy?
Right. Because so a lot of people who are born with penises identify as a boy, and a lot of people who are born with vulvas identify as a girl. A big part of that is because they're assigned the boy and girl labels, right, and are socialized as such.
Isn't that confusing for a little child?
I think it's actually more confusing to make children think that the 8 billion people on the planet all neatly fit into one of two boxes.
For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Debbie Hayton. Debbie is a transsexual physics teacher and journalist. Debbie has recently written a piece, Joe Biden's Trans Foolishness. Debbie Hayton, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, you're very welcome. Good to join you this morning.
Let me get your reaction to Dylan Mulvaney and her Dylan Mulvaney's celebrity status.
It's nauseating, isn't it? But what it shows is that this idea we have that trans people are oppressed and victims and downtrodden is just not true. Mulvaney is an example of what I would call trans privilege. Under what other situation would Mulvaney have met the president and be given all these advertising deals?
And the piece you heard there from 60 Minutes Australia, parents who take this they-bees approach to raising their children.
This concerns me. Raising children is about the child, and the child is male or female. The child is a boy or a girl. This seems to me to be about the parents and what the parents want, validating something within them. They should be putting their child first, and that means raising the child according to what we've all understood to be a biological reality, that there's two sexes.
Well, so as a transsexual person, I read your piece describing your transition. How do you react to the trans political culture or the political culture that's developed around trans and your own sort of experience and viewpoints on the matter?
Well, I regret this because it doesn't help. My own understanding of what it means to be transsexual has evolved over the last 15 years since I transitioned. At one point, I thought I was some kind of woman. Now I realise that that's nonsense. But in its essence here, we have with transsexualism one of several psychological disorders. To really desperately want to be the other sex is a psychological condition. And in these days, when it can be treated in some way by either psychotherapy, perhaps, or by psychiatry, or by drugs and surgery, these things are disorders that can be treated. But what we've taken is we've taken what I would describe as psychological disorders and created a lifestyle out of them. And it doesn't help. It doesn't solve the problems that people are struggling with. And it makes promises that can't be delivered, that we can change sex. And worst of all, it creates this closed-minded and inward-looking community which draws people in. The transgender community is the be-all and end-all, and it will support you, and it will look after you and protect you. This is not healthy. When this happens in other walks of life, we're very concerned about groups like this. But it seems to have slipped in again because with transsexualism, or what we now call transgenderism, nobody felt able to question it, or nobody in positions of power and authority in government have felt able to question it and say, hey, what's really going on here?
You wrote about your transition. After living this life, I know that I've never been a woman. Womanhood is not a feeling in my head or anyone else's. I was certainly driven to transition, but not because I was trapped in another body. I now realize there's only me in here and that I have always been here. How did you come to that recognition?
I think I had to learn it the hard way. And people say now, well, was it a mistake transitioning? Do you regret transitioning if it was all under a false for a false reason, that I thought I was some kind of woman? And in some ways, I do regret it. You know, I put my family through all sorts of stress and all sorts of difficulties. But I can look back now and realize and see the bigger picture. At the time, I couldn't, and it was something I had to work through just to really understand myself. I just hope that as we get a greater understanding of what's going on here, other people may realize sooner before they make such drastic changes to their lives, because the really dreadful thing that's happening is that people are being told they're the opposite sex. These poor children that you referred to, whose parents are bringing them as babies, are being raised from birth thinking that sex doesn't matter. All these ideas influence people's thinking and how they feel about themselves. And we need, as I keep saying, we need to return to reality. The reality is there's two sexes. We may not be happy with our sex. We may prefer to have been the other sex, however that can be. But we can't avoid the harsh reality that we are our bodies are real, and our bodies have a sex.
How are you received by the sort of leading, the designated leading voices in the trans world?
They don't think I'm trans.
You had the surgery. Yeah. You transitioned from a man to a woman, the surgery at least, and they don't recognize that.
No, because I deny this idea that we have a gender identity. Being trans is no longer somebody who has done things to their body, transitioned, had gender reassignment surgery so their body resembles the other sex. That's not what trans is in many people's eyes. Trans is having this gender identity. It's almost like a gendered soul, that we have this soul within us, which is gendered, and that and this overrules what our bodies are. So that if you've got a female soul, you're a woman, despite the reality of your body, and vice versa. And because I will stand up and say I don't have a gender identity, and I don't know what it means to have a gender identity, because I'm denying that, people say that I'm not trans, therefore, because to be trans is to have this gender identity.
What would you say to people who want to be quote unquote allies and just, the sentimentality that grips people such that they are just there to affirm whatever anybody says they are, and to not do so is to be some sort of bigot?
Well, real friends get alongside you and support you, but they also point out your errors. They also point out your mistakes. They provide you with constructive criticism. So to allies, what I would say is, yes, sure, trans people, we're human beings the same as everybody else. Mm-hmm. But if you want to be an ally, that means if we say something which is unhelpful or is untrue, you need to tell us, or else we won't learn. But to affirm falsehood and to affirm untruths, which is what people are doing, is not helpful.
What about the medical profession, your experience and what you're seeing now from these trans clinics that are being set up at children's hospitals, and many stories, cases of regret after taking puberty blockers or going the next step of surgery? You're hearing more voices about that, including from parents feeling like they were pressured to go down this path, even when it clearly wasn't working for their child. What you experienced versus what you see today?
Well, children should not be taking drugs to stop their puberty, taking cross-sex hormones and surgeries. That's not for children. Children need to grow up first to understand what it means to be human, what it means to be an adult. If, as an adult, they've got issues with their bodies, then as societies, we allow adults to have plastic surgeries, treatments. We do this so adults can change their bodies, but we don't let children do this. We don't let children. Have tattoos because we say that tattooing a body is a permanent mark, and children can't give consent to that. We say that for tattoos, or at least we do in England and Wales. But we're allowing children to have irreversible treatments, which is so much greater. You can hide a tattoo. You can't hide a puberty which has been stopped, or breasts which have been removed. And children have been subjected to that treatment. So in a lot of cases, we draw a line between what will accept adults choosing for their own bodies and what will permit children to do. And there's lots of examples. And it's not unknown for us to say things like, well, yes, adults can drink alcohol, children can't. Adults can buy tobacco, children can't. When it comes to irreversible surgeries like this is not for kids.
Debbie Hayton. Debbie is a transsexual. Debbie is a physics teacher and a journalist. Check out her column at Spectator, Joe Biden's Trans Foolishness. Debbie Hayton, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time, and best of luck to you.
You're very welcome. Have a good day.
And Debbie joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.